Welcome to Shelf Help. Today we're speaking with Karim Khalil, founder of Yaza, which I believe is the first brand to bring really authentic Lebanese style labneh to the US market. Just over a year, Yaza's expanded it over to 100 independent stores, I think over 1,000 stores nationwide, including some of the big names, Whole Foods, Erewhon, Central Market, HEB, recently Costco, I believe. Um, Before Yaza, Kareem spent a lot of years running another consumer goods business. That was a family business, I believe, in Nigeria. Definitely got a really unique experience in the CPG world, especially on the global perspective. Really excited to dive into it. Kareem, first off, for the listeners that aren't that familiar with Yaza, I'd love to just kind of start with a quick lay of the land in terms of the origin story, why behind the brand, kind of core products in the lineup, and then we'll go from there.
So, Adam, first of all, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm a big listener of the podcast, so I'm happy to be on it. Kind of growing up, so I was born in Geneva, raised in France, went to high school in Lebanon, went to college in the UK, and worked in Nigeria. And the year of 7, I was diagnosed with a disease called Hashimoto, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease, where I had to worry about and take care of my food and what I eat all my life, because otherwise, I would gain much weight and I'm tired all the time. And I had to learn how to eat healthy and how to eat well. The same time, being originally Lebanese, I'm tied to the nation and tied to my culture. And labneh is and was and will always be part of my diet. So everywhere I go, I was finding a way to either make labneh at home or even import it in Nigeria. I was bringing it in on the plane every time there was someone coming on the flight and put it in the fridge. So all my life, I worked at CPG with my family. We're a family of founders, of entrepreneurs. And I've always had a dream of launching a food company, a better for you food company. And labneh was always the forefront of that mission. I had the American dream. 2020 it was COVID. I was fed up with things. We had sold our business in Nigeria. I was home the whole time. Like, what do I do next? What do I do next? Let me move to the US and kind of figure it out. So second the US embassy in Paris opened, I flew to Paris, got a stamp on my visa, flew to the US, and I'm like, let me figure out. Let me see what's going on. Let me understand the Lebanese market. Yaza is Lebanese. Lebanese is Yaza. That's kind of how we started. And the reason behind that is when I got here, and I used to travel a lot to do that to kind of watch the market, understand the space. When I got here, Lebanese was only available in the ethnic stores and was only made using thickeners and milk powders and different preservatives to make the labneh because it's cheaper and there was nothing, no one else was making it that way. And I didn't know anything about labneh. We can kind of jump in, I think, later of how labneh is supposed to be made and why were people not making it the way it's supposed to be made. But that's kind of how the origin of the story and why the story started.
Cool. That makes total sense. That's a great background. But yeah, let's rewind back to those like early days. I think if I got it right, you started playing around with different recipes just in your kitchen, and after you moved to Atlanta, I think in 2020 or so. Without giving it away too many trade secrets, I'm just kind of curious what were some of the kind of key variables and factors that you were playing around with, or kind of key tweaks you made along the way between that first version you made to that final version, and you said, okay, this is right. I feel like this is good. I'm ready to take this to market to go find a co-packer to make this.
So very interesting question. For those who know me, I'm very, very picky with food. And for those who know me as well and know my family, my son, Kayan, is even pickier than me. So we would get him labneh from the ethnic store and be like, come and have it. And he would not accept to eat it. He was 4 years old at the time. And, that he's like, that's not labneh. I don't want to eat it. And he would like push it away. He barely spoke at the time. And so we started making labneh at home. Labneh is basically strained Greek yogurt with salt. That's how you would make it at home if you were the easy way. Obviously, you can start with the milk and make the yogurt and then strain it further. But basically, we would buy yogurt, strain it, and just add the salt and make it at home. And everyone that would come home to my house, all the people we met, would try that labneh and be like, this is so good. Where can we find it? Or where can we buy it? And I'm like, that was a good trial for me to kind of understand the reaction of people. But because labneh is always sold plain, or just milk, salt, and cultures, that's how it's made, and that's how it's sold back in Lebanon. No one eats it that way. We always add it's a kind of an ingredient. People add stuff to it. The way we like to eat it the most is adding za'atar, which is like a oregano blended spice, and olive oil. That's kind of one of the most authentic way. That's in my opinion, the best way to eat it. And I would add this to it, and people are like, my God, this is amazing. So this is where the idea came from. I would spend days and days just in the Whole Foods. And my dream was, how do I get labneh into Whole Foods? And I would spend days on the aisle of Whole Foods, talking people, understanding what are those guys looking for, talking to consumers, kind of sitting in the back of the aisle. My marketing manager would get upset at me if I tell the story of how I stalk people, but that's how I kind of understood the market. I had to. And that's kind of how the idea was born, making it the authentic way. So that's step one. But then where do you start? January of 2022, I took a co-working space, a space in a industrious. It's like a WeWork kind of an office. It's
Yeah.
a one-person office. And I'm like Googling, because ChatGPT was not that popular at the time. How do I make labneh? How do I get, find me a Greek yogurt factory, find me this, find me that. Like, where do I start? I didn't know where to start. I had consumer goods experience, but I didn't know anything about the US market. I didn't know geography in the US. There's so many states. I had to kind of figure out how this works, distribution networks, etc. And I was looking for a Greek yogurt factory for sale. I'm like, you know what? Let me produce it. It's supposed to be obvious. It's supposed to be simple. In Lebanon, I went to a few factories. You just make Greek yogurt and then you strain it extra. So let me find a Greek yogurt factory and then strain it extra. So I found this person. He's one of our. He's the founder of Yaza as well. He joined as early on, and I called. His name is Ron. I called him on the phone like, Ron, I heard you have your factory up for sale. Can we talk? And he's like, he was angry at the time. He had closed down his factory. He sold it off, and he's like, buddy, you don't want to get into it. Just don't worry about it. I called him again. I'm like, Ron, let's just meet and let's talk. So he came to the office. It was around March of 2022. And we sat down and like, Ron, I want to make labneh. And I explained to him how I make it at home. He's like, you don't want to do that. Forget about it. Just do something else. No, you don't do labneh. It's hard. No one knows what it is. It's not going to work. Forget about it. And I'm like, you know what? Let me hire you, for 6 months. Let's try and make it together. So for those 6 months, we would bring in labneh from Lebanon. We would have family and friends kind of smuggling in, because you're not allowed to bring dairy into the country. And just sending it to the labs to kind of understand how it's made. We hired a food scientist in Lebanon to help us understand the process. But for those who know how labneh is traditionally made, and this I didn't know, compared to the US, is they back strain it. So they literally take a cheesecloth, which I'm sure, Adam, you're familiar with that process. They just take a cheesecloth, and that's how they do it.
Yeah.
But that process is not allowed in the US. You're not allowed to make. You can make it at home, but you can't make it and sell it
Sure. Right.
nationally. So I'm like, crap, what do I do now? The food scientists we had hired in Lebanon, I'm like, you know what? Just leave us alone. Let's figure it out here. And I had Ron and I in the kitchen trying to figure out first how to make it here and how to get the gold standard. So how do we get to match the top sellers in Lebanon to the US flavor? And we tried. It took us probably 9 months to get to a acceptable where we wanted to be. Then we started adding flavors, and we had like 12 flavors to start with. Obviously, you always start with 3. That's kind of the rule of thumb. But we had 12 flavors to start with. We chose the top 3 that we wanted to. And we're like, okay, now then we have a prototype. We had to look for someone to produce it for us. And this was like the biggest challenge that we had to do, because it's a startup. It's dairy, which is really like scarce in the country. And no one wants to work with a startup because it's a risk working with a startup. So for those familiar with dairy products, there's something called the IMS certificate, which kind of lets you ship milk across different states. So I went to the FDA website and printed, it's a few hundred pages, a list of every company registered under that IMS certificate. I had 6 or 7 binders, and I spent months just going to the office in the morning, taking the phone, calling one after the other. Whoever doesn't answer, what's in an email, made a spreadsheet for everyone that, okay, this one answered, said no, this one ignored, this one's phone number is not working, or this one's a private company who does, a grocery store like Publix. They don't work for other people. And it took me, I would say, 6 months to get a call back. So funny enough, we had a lot of people answering the phone and be like, we don't do startups. We almost gave up. We started with kind of the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with like New York, because that's kind of our core market, core demographics. And we kind of went down. We finished the East Coast. We're like, okay, this is how I learned the US geography, by the way. I went into the Midwest. I went down to Texas, and I'm in California. And I'm like, it's not going to work. We went to Canada. I went in to co-packer in Canada, and then realized how much duty and quotas there are between the US and Canada on dairy. And we always gave up many times. And Ron's like, I told you, it's not going to work. And we get a call. The phone rings, and it's a co-packer that we had called that hadn't answered email or phone call, and said, oh, I got a call 3 months ago. Someone left me a voicemail about something with labneh. Let's talk. And I'm like, that was so happy. We scheduled a call, and luckily one of the companies they used to produce for got sold. So they had a lot of empty space, and they had to find someone. So timing worked, and it was the perfect co-packer. They're amazing partners to have. They're growing with us, and they've been super helpful. So that's kind of how we got to the co-packer. Now, how do we perfect the formulation, which was the biggest challenge? And we are still working on always improving as we scale up and as we grow. Because when we started, and the first production run we had was September of 2023, and those were small batches. Small batches are easier to produce. And then we got, and I don't know if you want to jump into it right now, we got in Whole Foods nationwide.
Nice.
We got that approval in August. We met with Whole Foods in August before we had the first production successful.
Okay.
We got it to Whole Foods nationwide, and they're like, you have to launch in June. We want the product to be delivered first week of June. And we're going to pick it up, I think it was May 23 or May 24 of 2024. So we kept producing. We had like 6 or 7 batches that we had to throw to garbage because, as we scaled up, it just was not working. And as the time we were producing for Whole Foods, we thought, we had to figure it out. It was going to work. I spent a lot of time in upstate New York, and I kind of tried the product a day before the truck is coming to pick it up, and I'm like, that's not it. And everyone's like, but it's very close and it's almost perfect. I'm like, if it's not perfect, we're not sending it to Whole Foods because you have one chance in life. If you don't do it right, that's it, you lose it. But Whole Foods, and I said, sorry, due to Memorial Weekend, we had a delay. Just give us 3 days extra, and then we produced it again. Fingers, we did the exact opposite of the theory, and it works. And we shipped to Whole Foods, and it's been a success so far. That's kind of how we got to where we are.
Talking about kind of visual identity and packaging design, I think you did a bit of a rebrand recently in last year. It's like thinking about like the initial version, let's say pre-rebrand, what were like when you're building out the brand identity, visual identity, maybe thinking about the context of when you're building out kind of the brief for whatever, agency or designer you work with that can actually kind of build that out. What do you remember were some of the kind of key variables that were top of mind for you in terms of what was important to you from like a, brand voice, brand positioning, how you wanted the brand and, look and feel?
So that's a very good question. And I think that's the biggest challenge for startup companies, to a company who's trying to create a new category that didn't exist at the time. We were trying to do, and I think it was a mistake, and we made a lot of mistakes along the way. I think that was one of the mistakes we did, but we didn't understand what we were selling. We didn't understand our consumer very well. And we did a lot of research. So we did a market research where we got people into a room. We gave them labneh without any labels on it. We gave them different tools, peanut chips, a piece of bread, a bagel, a spoon, knife, sandwich, just to see how they react when they see it and what they think it is. And we didn't know who our consumer was exactly. We didn't know how we're going to tell the story and how we're going to explain labneh. So I think what we did, and because Yaza wasn't big at the time and no one knew what Yaza was, we put a lot of information on the packaging. So although I still think it's a beautiful packaging when you look at it up front, one of the mistakes we do, and I think that's one of the things I always recommend to new founders launching a new brand or rebranding, is print the packaging, take it to the store, put it on shelf, walk the aisle. There's a rule that says 6 feet, 6 seconds. That's how fast you have to, people make decisions on what they buy. And if they don't find it, there's a problem. So our packaging, I thought, was beautiful. The problem we had is we couldn't figure out, or people couldn't figure out the difference between flavors. Even I would make those mistakes when I was in stores. People couldn't find it on shelf. So I knew we were in Whole Foods nationwide. I was walking, I think in Dallas for a trade show. And I was looking for my product on shelf. And it took me like 5-10 minutes to find it. And that's my old product. I knew it was in that store and I couldn't find it. And that's like, I was like, okay, there are some problems we need to solve. And once you want to, I think, do a rebrand, I've had a lot of discussion with friends, community friends, and founder friends over the last few months about the rebrand. The rebrand has to solve a problem. And the best way to approach it is let's make a list of the problems we have and how can a rebrand solve them. And if it doesn't solve the problems, there's no point of investing because a rebrand is really expensive. And people are like, a lot of people are asking me, why did you do a rebrand so early? And I'm like, I had these problems and we can talk about them if you want. And I had to solve them quickly because the brand is not as big as it's going to be. We're growing very fast. The earlier you solve it, the better. And that's why we did the rebrand. And I think the rebrand, I'm sure you agree, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
and we've already seen a lot of positive feedback. It's really early to tell on the sales side of things, but it tells the Yaza story better. Because we are the only authentic Lebanese labneh in the market, the only one, we are the highest protein, 3 times more protein than the other labnehs. We're half the calories, quarter of the fat, and we have a lot of probiotics for your gut health. These meet a lot of trends that are going on these days. But that message was not clear in the first packaging. And I think that's what's coming now. because we're a brand founded, our team is very young and fun, and we were having a lot of fun at working on Yaza. We had to translate that into the packaging. The packaging is more fun, is more lively. It talks more to the category was changed so much, where companies like Sabra have been there for so long and haven't changed much over the last decade. The new brands in the category have forced that new trend to make it more fun, more cool. It's fun to eat better for you foods. We're not on a diet, it's a lifestyle. And it's a fun lifestyle. And that's kind of what we wanted to show the consumer.
That makes total sense. Thinking back to when you, I guess, and when you started, decided, yes, we are going to do this rebrand. It's worth it. We need to do it. Going through that process, thinking back, were there any decision points along the way that were you remember most kind of contentious, or the ones that required the most debate around, yeah, we should make it look this way or that way? Or, yes, kind of curious because this process is always a very, complicated, in-depth process. And I think it's always good to hear how things
Yes.
actually work behind the scenes when you're going through it.
So we've talked a lot about labneh, and this is kind of where this is our core product line, and this is what makes Yaza is our labneh line. But as we grew and as we met with more retailers, some of them are scared to take labneh on. So
Okay.
yeah, the more conventional ones are like, okay, I don't know what it is. I don't know if my consumers don't gonna know what it is. Help us build a brand block around labneh, and we're willing to bring it in. So with the demand of retailers, we added two more SKUs: baba ganoush, which is an eggplant dip and very popular, people know it, and muhammara, which is red pepper and walnut dip, which I believe is our best dip ever. Whoever hasn't tried it has to try it because it's amazing. And we built that brand block as we were designing those packaging, because we had in the back of our mind, our packaging is not good enough. We need to do something about it. The when and how was unknown to us. When we started designing that baba ganoush and muhammara, it got more complex. Where initially we couldn't figure out how to differentiate different flavors of labneh that we had. We had three flavors. We were adding a fourth one with garlic. Like, what color do I make muhammara, and how do people know this one has labneh, this one has no labneh, and this one is dairy, non-dairy? It was kind of so complicated, and it was so ugly, the designs we did at the time. We're like, we have to do something. So we went and we hired a really big design firm, and we kind of explained the problem. Like, listen, help us design those two SKUs, and they were very smart on how they approach it, because they knew we need to change the design, and they asked us, "You guys are ready for a refresh?" And we said yes. I said, initially I was against it. I was like, "Okay, I'll do a refresh." Then they asked us, "Will you guys change your logo?" And I said, "No." They're like, "Okay, let's show you what we can do." They took it slowly, and when they gave us the options, I was like, "Okay, we're changing," and we kind of ran with it. So they were very good at convincing us, and I think internally on the team, we were all convinced that something needed to change. But then working with a big design firm really helped us confirm that. And it's obviously, if you change, you have to change for the best. If it's not going to be better, don't do it. Don't waste time, don't waste your money on it.
This may not really have been applicable to you guys because you said you did the rebrand, fairly early in the business. But oftentimes when I'm talking to other brands that go through a rebrand, it's often the thing that's kind of a delicate, decision process is how do you kind of balance? Obviously, you're doing a rebrand for a reason. There's obviously a desire for some level of a fresh look in some way or another, but you also don't want to make things look so unfamiliar in the rebrand that for those loyal customers, those power users that have been buying the product, that get it to the point where they don't really feel like they resonate with it or recognize it anymore. And I guess worst case scenario, it changes so much that they go in the store to look for it the next week and then they can't find it. I'm not sure if that was relevant to you because did it so early, but I'm curious if so, did you kind of think about that and how you kind of balance the two?
So we thought about it, and that's kind of what pushed us to do it early on. That was kind of the factor for us. Okay, do we wait more, or do we just do it now? And because
Yeah.
we were launching Baba Ganoush and Muhammad, we had to do it early on. So I agree. That's a problem. That's a worry for bigger brands.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to do refreshes and more rebrands as we grow, as we learn more and more. But I think that the timing worked well for us, and the fact that Yaza is more visible and the flavors are more visible on the new packaging. For people who have not seen the packaging, we can share some links after that for them to go and see it. But because it was more visible, I think it's a non-issue for Yaza in particular.
Yeah. If you had another friend approach you, they're in the process of they're considering doing like a packaging refresh or somewhat of a rebrand. I guess one is like, what kind of questions might you ask them to like help them decide, yes, this is the right decision to do or not? And then just in general, any other kind of recommendations, assuming they said, yeah, we're going to do this, like
So
learning what
Adam, I have, and I
have
don't know
them
if I'm, I guess
do or don't do.
I have a couple of friends. They're CPG founders. And that I recommend everyone in the CPG industry to build that community around them of different CPG founders where you can talk and help.
Yeah,
Both of them, we share the same buyers. We're in the same category. We compete in a certain aspect, but we talk almost every week.
that's
We
awesome.
share a lot of information. We help each other, and all three of us were talking about rebrand. One of us, Hummus Goodness, which, shout out to them. They do great hummus. They did a rebrand. I think it's fantastic. It's amazing. And she shared, along the way, she was sharing with me her progress. And I think she did a really good job. And the other person, I don't want to mention her name just because I don't know if she wants to share that she's doing a rebrand. But she called me up and said, "You guys are doing rebrand. I want to do a rebrand too. I feel I'm missing out." And I sat with her and I'm like, "Listen, can we talk almost every week about the rebrand?" And she hasn't done it yet. She's kind of deciding. The rebrand has to solve problems. It has to be better, but also solve problems. If it's just a rebrand to look better, that doesn't help.
Yeah,
So the problems. So in our case, and our problem is we couldn't differentiate the flavors. People didn't know how much protein. We have 3 times more protein. Should let consumers know that because people care about protein. They're paying for a premium product. It's a more expensive product. They should understand why they should pay more. Our packaging, we're the only in the category that uses a K3 patented packaging, which is recyclable, good for the environment, sustainable. We should also make that visible and appearing to the two consumers. We didn't do all of those. And I think that these were the problems. At the same time, we couldn't see the brand name. We couldn't see the product name or the flavor. It was so much information on the packaging, which is why we needed a refresh. So going back to my friend, I'm like, what is your problem? What are the things? Write down, make a list, take a piece of paper and just write down the top 5 priorities you want to do. And sometimes just going back to basics really helps understand. And, I always say nothing is hard in life. You just have to dissect it, cut it into different stages or different phases, and you just make the decision easier. Because
totally.
if you think about the rebrand, oh my God, it's so many things to do. But if you sit down, write down what's the process, every step by step, what needs to be done, you just simplify things.
Totally.
And that was my recommendation to her.
You mentioned the Whole Foods launch. I think you launched in, I think it was August 2023, 100 or so stores in the Northeast. And I think less than a year later, you're launching nationally. What have you found now that you're in other retailers? What have you found is unique about working with Whole Foods and the keys to succeeding in Whole Foods compared to other retailers?
So I think I mentioned that earlier, but when I started Yaza, my dream was to get into Whole Foods. That was
Yeah.
kind of my ultimate dream. And a funny story, I have a friend or someone I met and she became a friend. She owns a juice store and she's in 2 Whole Foods stores in Atlanta. And the first thing I did, I got connected with her. Like, can I sell my labneh in your juice store? And she's like, it's great quality. Our brand of juices, it's called Detox, is about, better for you, healthy. Your product is amazing. It is great. It's healthy. I'll set it there. And that made me so happy. Like, I'm selling in Whole Foods, or at least it's a different cashier. We pay differently, but geography wise, it's in the same store as where Whole Foods is. And I felt so good being in Whole Foods. That was kind of the dream. So I met with Whole Foods in August of 23. We didn't have production yet. We didn't have product in the market. We were at the trade show. And for those who know the process for Whole Foods, usually submit for regional placement. You start local, regional. No one goes national, especially for a brand that's not even in the market. And our Whole Food buyer at the time, she's amazing. She's like, "What's your capacity?" And because our co-packer had the capacity, I said, sky's the limit. You tell me what you want, we'll make it. And she's like, "Can you make it nationwide?" And I said, "Yes." And I went back to the team and I said, she asked me that question. I said, "Yes." The team's like, "You're crazy. It's not going to work. Tell her we can't do it. We can only do regional." So we spent time waiting for that Whole Foods email because for those who know, it's a really long process. We meet in August. We didn't get that email till February, March. We get that email and they tell us we're in 86% of stores. And I got upset. I'm like, I set up a call with her, like, "Can we be in 100% of stores?" And she looks at me and she's like, and I wanted also a third SKU. And she's like, "Listen, I've never given anyone that chance. Hard work starts now." I didn't understand it until that call was over. And I realized, I hadn't slept, but I still haven't slept since then. It's been a very tough, very long journey because you get one chance, but you can be here and you can go down very, very quickly if you fail. So that's kind of that's my experience with Whole Foods. They are great to work with. I think for me, it's where I shop every day. It's my personal favorite retailer with my dream for Yaza. And I'm like, where do I go from now? And obviously there's more dreams and we're growing and things are going great. But Whole Food is for us, it's our best performing grocery store because the consumer that goes to Whole Food is more well traveled. They understand labneh better, and they care more about, our plain labneh has three ingredients: milk, cultures, and salt. That's how it's supposed to be. Consumers know that, and that's why people, go for Yaza labneh at Whole
Yeah.
Foods.
Cool. That makes sense. Mid last year ish, you launched in Costco as well. Like thinking about, I mean, Costco is definitely kind of its own beast, but thinking about Costco compared to Whole Foods and some of the other retailers you're in, what have you found is like really unique about Costco in terms of what it takes to win there?
Yeah, so Costco is a different, they say different animal. I don't, if that's a good thing to say, but it is. So Costco, and I want to kind of talk about how Costco works for the emerging brands that want to get to Costco. Costco requires you to do something called a roadshow, which is basically a 4-day, 5-day weekend. You start Wednesday to Sunday, and they want the founders and the team, the actual Yaza team, to be in stores. You go from store to store the whole weekend, where from open to close, you're selling the product in store. And you sample different flavors. They come and see how is the feedback, which flavor people like the most. And according to that, they start ordering on a rotational basis. So they order for a 6-week period. If it does well, then after a few months, they give you another rotation. And then after a few months, another rotation. And then you can expand to other geographies. So last year, I didn't know much about Costco. I had met with different Costco buyers, and they gave me the opportunity, the chance to do those roadshows. So we did 9 weekends. It's physically draining. It's the hardest thing you can do. It's really, really hard, but it's a lot of fun. And before I kind of talk about Costco, that's what gave me the confidence. And Kelsey, my marketing manager, asked me, we were driving that day, going to a meeting, and she's like, I want to know, when did you realize that Yaza was going to make it? Yaza was going to be a brand. Like, what was the moment that you felt that, you know, you're looking for, you're talking to VCs, you're taking it to the next level. What gave you that confidence? And I told her it was Costco, because Costco has a big spectrum of different demographics, and it's the average consumer. Whereas Whole Foods is not. Whole Foods is 3% of the market.
Sure.
Costco is everyone. There's so much cross shopping between the Whole Food consumer goes to Costco, the Walmart consumer goes to Costco, and everything in between. Everyone goes to Costco.
Yeah.
They have over 100 million members, and spending time in the store, listening to people, try the product, and then buying. And there's one roadshow we sold every 31 or 32 seconds a unit, from
Wow.
open to close, consistently over the weekend.
Wow.
And it's Lebanese. We're not selling potato chips. We're not selling popcorn. We're selling something they had never heard of. Most people didn't hear about it. People will buy it because it says Mediterranean diet. People will buy it because it tastes good. People will buy it because they like a flavor. They heard about a flavor when they saw it on social media. Seeing that gave me that confidence that, yes, Yaza is a product people like. Obviously, we need to do much more marketing. We need to create more awareness. And we can talk about how that's done. But Costco helped me get there. And our rotations, we got a rotation in the Northeast, which is, everything from Boston down to North Carolina. And we did really well. Like, we sold out very quickly. We did excellent. And we're going to do more business. We're doing more stuff with Costco. I can't really disclose details, but other regions that we did well with are taking Yaza as well. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up for this year.
Very exciting. Educating consumers about a new product category, or just educating in consumer education in general, is, from my experience, it's generally a not a cheap thing to do. You have to kind of figure out ways to, do it efficiently, especially as an earlier stage brand. And to your point, I think there's probably a good amount of Americans that don't know what labneh is compared to probably some other types of products. What has you found really works in terms of kind of consumer education strategy standpoint?
So let me step back on when we created Yaza. I think that's really important, because that was part of our concern. How do I educate how to the challenges? So one of the mistakes we did is we put so much stuff on the packaging, and we thought that writing a lot on the packaging is going to help. The problem is consumers have a few seconds. They don't have time to read. They don't have time. Okay, I've never heard of this, and keep going. Whereas for us, Yaza is everything. For consumers, there's 100 eyes in the store. Yaza is only one SKU out of the 100 SKUs, and that's one of the 100 shelves on the store. So that's one of the mistakes we did. One thing I think we did really well when understanding that consumer, that market research we did, is because the first reaction of every consumer was dipping it, is we decided to put it in the dip section, because we're creating a category. Technically, you can put it in the cheese section, specialty cheese, yogurt section, because it's made, technically yogurt, but it's also cheese. And we're like, okay, let's put it where the hummus lives, because it's the similar applications, same consumer who wants to try something Mediterranean, international flavors, global flavors. And that was one of the things that helped us get that trial, is putting in the right place. Obviously, demos is where we've been focused on with Whole Foods, especially We do a lot of demos in every city in the country, or we try at least to do as many as we can, where we have strong brand ambassadors. They're having people try the product. The more people try it, the better. And you would hope word of mouth. I met a person over the weekend. She bought it. She's in Atlanta. Her daughter's in California. She's like, where can I buy it in California? Because my daughter lives there. I told her where to buy it. And, we're hoping that effect will happen. That works for natural space. That works for Whole Foods, but that's not going to work for going, in the big box conventional. You can't do a demo in every Costco store in the country or in every Kroger store in the country, etc. And this is where the packaging change, where any information explaining exactly what it is, very short and sweet, really helps consumer. And that's kind of one of the reasoning behind our packaging change. And the other thing we did is with the new items like baba ganoush muhammara and the launch of a new SKU, we're launching another SKU to complete that everything but hummus set. That we believe that this will help get trial, because if someone knows baba ganoush, they will try it and then they will like it. They'll be like, okay, I like what he has done. Then you go see the other products they've done. Similar to people know muhammara or that new item. I think that new item is more popular and will help us get a lot of trial. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it. Obviously, there's no perfect way. We've tried different things. We've tried PR. I don't think it worked. We tried to do a lot of social media. It's really hard because people see it on social media, but then they're like, where do I find it? And it's hard to kind of link that to it. One thing that helped us add in a lot is a lot of restaurants, especially the Michelin star, the high-end restaurants, have now labneh on their menu. And that's the trend we've seen in the last few years, which I think is exciting to see. I had octopus on a bed of labneh the other day. I'm like, wow, like I never thought about that. And it's good to see because that creates awareness. And then they go to the store. They're like, okay, what's the best labneh? They look at the ingredients and they go for Yaza, they try it, and then hopefully they become customers for life.
That's awesome. Other than demos, not talking about Costco, Whole Foods specifically, just all the retailers that you're in, what have you and the team found has had the most impact in terms of just, driving velocity? And that could be, I don't know, shelf talkers, aisle violators, well-crafted promotional strategy.
Promotion has been the easiest way to get velocities up. Obviously, it's a good way to get trial. And we kind of track our promotions, and we see that after we do 4 or 5 promotions a year, we don't want to do too many promotions because we don't want people then to get used to buying it for cheaper, and then they won't buy it when it's at a fair price. So we've seen a lot, and that's how we've been growing. We've grown over 200% of Whole Foods in the last year. And that's because, we do promotion, and after the promotion, we see the numbers keep going up versus kind of going down, which is a great sign that more people have tried it, consumers have tried it, and it's growing up. So I think promotion is the best. Shelf talker is more difficult, and it's only like independent stores. We take those to trade shows when I go to a lot of, door to door when you visit cities of a few indies where we give them those shelf talkers. But it's really tough to make sure they stay on shelf. It's really tough to make sure that people see them. But promotions has been our best way. Social media is another way to drive people to the store and build that loyalty fan base, which we're trying to build as a brand that cares about better for you. No seed oils. There's no compromise on quality and ingredients we choose. Mm-hmm. And I know consumers have a difficulty finding those brands. So once they find us, we hope for them to stay there.
Totally. Right before we repress record, we're not going to Expo West, and I'm happy to share, our thought process around why you're not. So yeah, curious what your guys' thoughts process was there.
So we did Expo West in our first year, just before we got that Whole Foods announcement. Expo West is, for those who don't know, Expo West is a trade show. They call it the Super Bowl of trade shows. It's really the Super Bowl. Like, it is the busiest show you will ever go to. It's crowded. The problem we have for Expo West is becoming more and more expensive. And the retailers we want to meet, or at least we want to target, we've targeted in a way through either brokers or through relationships, or we find ways to find them. And we see no value spending, $100,000+ on the booth to hopefully meet one of the buyers. Because the thing with buyers is every retailer has 20 or 30 buyers. So not only you have to find the retailer you're looking for, but you have to find the one buyer that you're looking for, and you have to hope he passes by your booth. And when he's passing by your booth, you're not busy talking to someone else, trying to sell you a service. And that's kind of why we decided, we're very careful. We're still a startup. We're still a small company. And we want to make sure that every dollar spent is spent in the right place and the right way. So we don't want to compromise on quality or marketing policies or anything else. But, one day we'll have the funds, and hopefully we'll party at Expo West together.
For sure. One of these days soon. Yeah, it's been great. Last question for you, Kareem. You're obviously got your hand on your hand on the pulse of what's happening in the CPG world in a lot of ways. Just curious, outside of Yaza, any particular brands or just general kind of trends in the space in general that have been piquing your interest lately?
So I'm very loyal to the brands I eat, or even clothing wise, I'm very very loyal. Like I have a go to chocolate brand. I think Hue is my favorite. I have it almost
Yeah,
every day.
great one.
Yerba mate is a drink I have almost every day as well. There's a lot of particular brands I love. And when talking about food trends, one thing that upsets me is both fiber is trending, all protein is trending. And I gotta get upset. Why is it trending? It's not supposed to be trending. It's supposed to be there every day. Like fiber is not supposed to be, oh, this is a year of protein. Next year is a year of fiber.
Right,
Every year should be the year of protein. And
right,
every year should be the year of fiber. You should have fiber every single day and every single year. It doesn't matter. It's still not supposed to be a trend. Dubai chocolate is a cool trend, but protein and fiber should not be trends.
totally.
Health should not be trends. Those are things you have to incorporate part of your lifestyle. Food can be a trend, but not a macro. And it's a kind of upsetting in a way that people are like, oh, it's no longer protein these days. People care about fiber. No, people should care about protein as well and fiber. And we try to stay on what they call trend, but what are good for people. We're working on a protein and fiber dip for the end of this year because I think that's kind of what people need, not what people only want. They need it.
Yep, I respect that. Yeah, Kareem, this has been awesome. What's the best place for you? Definitely have a lot of knowledge in this space. What's the best place for people to follow along with you? And then what's the best place these days to follow along with Yaza as well?
So Adam, I like it, and I always post that on LinkedIn that I love when new founders, and I have a few that we have regular calls because I have it as well with people that companies are bigger than me where I learn from them. I'm happy to anyone who's in the space who has questions of where to start. There's a lot of free resources like Startup CPG, like Shelfmade. Shout out to Ashley who's built an amazing platform.
She's great.
And I'm happy to help and I'm happy to connect and I'm happy to do what it takes because I get help. I like to give the help. So LinkedIn is the best way if you have any questions on a personal basis, you want to talk about anything, I'm happy to talk. Christian Karim Khalil is my LinkedIn profile. I think we can put the link. But if you want to catch up with Yaza, Yaza.foods on Instagram is our best channel. We have a TikTok, which we're trying to keep up with, but our Instagram is our best channel to kind of keep up with where we're going.
Cool. Perfect. Awesome. This has been great, Kareem. Really appreciate the time. I think that's the pod.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.